record is a chronological account, at least in my memory or my emotional memory, of what happened to me over a few years that involved some of the highest highs, both personally and in my career, and definitely the lowest lows. I had an action-packed few years in my career where things were going well as a songwriter, and I had a close relationship with someone, and at some point it all fell apart, and it fell apart really, really horribly in a way that I was no longer able to survive even. And things got very, very dark, very bad for me. And my family was really there to help me through it, and some good friends. And then it's crazy. It's still like raw, even though it's a few years. And I really started to look at what had brought me to that situation and to somebody that maybe wasn't the best person to be around for my mental health. And I realized that I had been making a lot of these choices in my life in one way or another, and I had lots of struggles with mental health. It was absolutely no secret. It was impossible to hide, and I was tired of being, the crazy girl, the sad girl, this and that, when really I was just struggling to find out where I belonged and if I had any worth or reason to be here. This album that I wanted to make is completely different than anything else I've ever done, because the songs came from a very difficult time in my life, and the music became a tool of healing for me to write it. And when it was time to arrange them, I realized that I had changed as a person and therefore as an artist, and I needed a new strategy and a new aesthetic for recording. And I wasn't sure what that was yet. But what I do know in my life is that when I meet interesting and supremely talented people and they want to be part of something with me, I usually, if I follow that instinct and develop that relationship and just try stuff and try to learn as much from them as possible and have a trust relationship where I can input my ideas in a free and almost like unorganized space, because my creativity is super chaotic, I would say, and I like it that way. I think freedom is the ultimate way to begin a creative process, and I was really excited to basically jump off a cliff and have no idea what I was doing and almost forget about everything that I had learned about how you're supposed to make a record in modern days in 2023. And I didn't know what that was. And I know for a fact that the best music is made and the best art is made when open-minded, free, creative, talented, and experienced people come together and share those talents together in a trusting relationship and make something. One thing to know about this record, it also had a very unusual concept behind the recording part of it, because I could not choose one producer. Having worked in Canada for a long time on various records, and I have so many talented producer friends, so what ended up happening almost by accident is that I did each song with a different producer in a different Canadian city.
I got some new clothes, I got some good friends, they're making me whole. I'm not over it, 'cause I'm only human, gave you real emotion.
So I picked every producer, I asked every producer, or my dream producer for each song very meticulously based on their production styles, and also as people, which song I thought would suit them best in subject matter or style, arrangement possibilities. And we did, so every song is co-produced. The mood of a studio, and not only the gear, can set up a great inspiration and artistic, aesthetic space to make the kind of record you want. And I think this studio is that. If you look around, it's beautiful. All of the gear is top-notch, a lot of analog stuff for people who are fans of making records in the image of their heroes. Who used a Rupert Neve board? I mean, they're all a bit different, right? But Beatles. But I worked in studios for so long, they were all SSL, and now I'm just hooked on the Neve experience. But anyway. So this vocal, and I don't always do this, but I should mention this was mostly one take, as this is a very emotional, it's the beginning of the tale, and I didn't do a lot of pulling different parts, which we call comping. It was mostly one take with a few other things that had a through emotion. So what did you do? How'd you make me sound so cool?
Well, so when you have your first impression, you always choose colors and space. And it felt very fragile to me. And I didn't want to overpower it with aggressive compression or all the modern pop tools that can allow you to place vocal on a very high podium. I wanted it to be very intimate and very personal. And to be honest, it's the concept of less is more. If you want to humanize certain elements of production, you usually dial back on the post-processing and all that stuff. You just keep it close to what artists try to communicate, which is an actually raw vocal that came through the microphone onto the tape. And the only thing you have to do is just to find the right spot in the mix for it. And I think that's the best strategy to maintain artistic intention in mixing.
I know that we did do this, which was another added challenge, but we did sing this on just a vintage handheld 57, like a rock band would do in the 70s. Mm-hmm. Because I walked around the room and gave a performance, and it just felt like, I don't know, it gave me like a safe space to sing in that wasn't just too bombastic or big. I was scared to leave, scared no one else would want me. You've got a power, you've got a This song was co-produced by Halifax's Aaron Costello, who is an unbelievably talented and freely creative artist and producer. And the challenge with this song is the subject matter is very, very sensitive and very important to me, dealing with my own personal story of harassment, of sexual assault, of being in an industry that's not always a safe place for women. And this was my personal story and I had to entrust it to a woman. And what was interesting is I think sometimes women can produce differently than men, and that's a good thing. So we went for space, we went for softness, we went for integrity, we went for honesty. And one thing we wanted to do that we knew for sure was a string quartet. We pulled from odd influences. We wanted to go left of center. My influences in the string arrangements were really based around Bjork and Radiohead, and Johnny Greenwood and Radiohead, who does all the arrangements. It's only a cello.
Yeah, that I wanted to just showcase how beautiful her tone is.
Oh, her tone is incredible. Everything about a good record using real instruments starts with amazing players, both technically and emotionally.
There you go. That's it.
That's what I love. For a track where we didn't want to use drums because I thought it would overcrowd the intention of the lyric, we wanted to create some rhythm and movement, so we used the strings doing some more staccato things. We used a marching band kick drum that Aaron vigorously played at Fang Studios in Halifax, Joel Plaskett's place. He came by and said hi.
You were the love of my life, love of my life, love of my life.
As I said, I'm recording this album all over the country in different cities as I travel around with all of my favorite talented people. So this song was done mostly in Toronto, but continued in Montreal. And we added these great vintage analog synthesizers. So we had this beautiful sound. Let's solo it, if you can.
Yep.
With this beautiful sound direct from this keyboard. This is not a plug-in, this is real, it's an analog, it's a feeling. And it sounds really beautiful in the verse, but when we got to the chorus, where there's a big thesis and catharsis and expression of what I was going through, the synth then felt too soft. So as the lyric intensifies, we came up with this idea here, if you want to solo in the chorus, we added some distortion. That's my heart. That's my heart. Fast and slow, car crash, helpless, no control.
We choose to use kind of unusual approach for a vocal, to use far-field microphone that usually used in classical recordings that would allow to extend the dynamic range from very quiet and intimate phrases to very loud and open notes that would usually, those microphones would be usually used for like opera recordings.
Oh, really?
In a big venues.
Of course, I would love people to listen to this record, but that's not why I'm making it, to have, spins or notoriety. That's not the point. I wrote these songs to heal myself because I was in the darkest place I'd ever been, and I had to face myself. And by walking through it consciously and attentively, I got better. And I found out who I was, who I'd always known, but I unmasked from everything.
Take a pill, be the belle of the ball.
Set out to do something to help myself and get to know myself and make art that was
Cover my body in the
exactly what I wanted to do, even without a plan.
You'll find,
And I'm like
drink from the
actually proud of myself for the first time in my life.
With me, this Cinderella ain't never met a party that she'd ever wanna leave. Darkness flickered on the edge of town as the chandeliers crashed on the madding crowd. Sometimes you've gotta jump off to find the things that you lost. We were desperados in Balenciaga gowns, jewels shimmering through the clouds. There's so much beauty baby in the fall. I felt just like a shooting star. You may run out of heart, you may run out of time, you'll run out of champagne and run for your life. In gilded rivers we drowned in delight. Didn't we have one for the ages on high? Every single night everything would shine, crystal candlelight. Won't apologize, release the storm inside into the living wild, and let your love flow like classical lines.